Human intelligence from viewpoint of neural networks. An exploration of what it is like to be human. Formation of neural circuits that control behavior. Activities of a life are carried out to sustain the life. So, the origin of the intelligence of living beings lies in their vital activities. In a living organism, the organization of chain reactions is formed by its experiences. After the formation of the organization of chain reactions, a similar activity is creatively repeated. There are activities to control and to be controlled in a multicellular organism. A division of labor will be divided into sensory cells, those receive stimulation, and muscle cells, those perform corresponding actions. The neural networks of the associative cortex in the cerebrum organizes the activities of muscle cells by the activities of the sensory cells. In the associative cortex, activities that should be in response to situations from real world are assembled. Here, the perception of reality and the activity of how it should be are not the same. It is necessary to share activities those should be in the life of a community. Ancient Greek philosophers explored about the thinking mechanism. Firstly, intelligence is carried out by patterns of activities in neural network. The function of intelligence is formed by its experiences. As for a behavior, the pattern of impulses units of activity is memorized in the neural network like a music box pin pattern. When a loop is formed by series of transference elements, it is possible to keep the chain of activities of the motion temporarily. The activities that connect the activities of sensory cortex with the activity of the motor cortex are creatively assembled in association cortex in the cerebrum. Furthermore, modern humans began to express activities that control behavior in language in the association cortex. Newborn human baby cannot stand and walk immediately after the birth. The baby will learn the basic elements of movement through experience in the first year of life. He will be able to stand and walk by combining the elements of movement. Humans had developed the associative cortex, which controls behavior through bipedal life. In addition, when riding a bicycle, balanced muscle control is carried out in the cerebellum, not the cerebrum. Here, Purkinje cells in the cerebellum have a suppression control mechanism that commands to suppress when the command to drive does not come. The neural circuits of the associative cortex are responsible for how to respond. The respond is described by a logic of if A equals B, then X equals Z. Control of behavior is carried out by combining such rules. The neural networks with hierarchical structures are formed by logical consistency, the structure of which can be described in elemental reductionism. Therefore, we can explain that intelligence is realized in a network of subroutines that execute the logic, if A equals B, then X equals Z. Intelligence carried out by a network of activities. Nerve cells are used as junctions to transfer impulses in a neural network. The nerve cell responds by inputting a pattern of impulsive activities. The impulsive action is transferring neural network. So, the brain can be considered a network of subroutines by thinking of impulse as one reaction. On a computer, click on an icon to specify the address of desired operation and make it works. Internet is a network of computers. We write related words into the search field and connect to data uploaded on the internet. When the amount of data is large, the data is divided into small packets to shorten the processing time of the packet. Here, each packet accompanies with the address of destination. Also, the function of artificial intelligence is realized by decoders. Those are connected to the data bus in parallel where the label of data is its address. Neural networks for language use. The neural networks of language use are the same manner as the mechanisms of behavioral. The linguistic configuration will be hierarchical due to logical consistency. That is, repeated labeling the column of stimuli gathered makes a hierarchical structure. The elements of language are organized in a hierarchical manner, and speech can be controlled by a row of stimuli putters. N. Chomsky proposed a model of generative grammar as humans are born with the faculty of language. Chomsky's standard theory first sets up dictionaries and writing down rules to represent the structure of sentences. So, we can analyze mechanism of language by creating various expression, using similar sentences as the same template, and fitting words selected from the dictionary into the template. A serial circuit connecting processing elements can convert serial activities into parallel array of activities. Neural networks with a hierarchical structure enable language use. We can show the structure of the sentence formed as shown in Fig. 5. Neural networks in language use. Humans began to live bipedally and live together, developing intelligence to control movements. The associative cortex of the neocortex of the human brain has expanded by activities that express how to behave. The associative cortex is interconnected with other areas of the cerebral neocortex without direct contact with the outside of the brain, and accounts for about 2/3 of the total cerebral neocortex. Language activities are formed based on individual activities and have their own characteristics. However, sharing the world of linguistic activity has made its intelligence advanced. Human beings have been working with dreams up The linguistic activity in dreams is not reality itself, but what humans imagine. Therefore, in the human brain, which has the function of making judgments in order for animals to survive, was pushed into the inside of the cerebrum as a limbic system. Although the area of the neocortex, which is responsible for language activities, has developed significantly, the activity of the neocortex is at risk of running out of control due to the deviation from reality. Aum Shinrikyo is a group of people who have deviated from reality by practice in the name of liberation. The language of thought is not reality itself, but has omissions and exaggerations, and there is a risk of falling into madness. Formation of a civilized society by linguistic activities. A life of language use was started as the basis for a self-sufficient life. As humans begin to settle in different regions, their lives are different in different regions, and the products they produce are also different. The living environment gave rise to a life centered on hunting and a community centered on agriculture. Therefore, it often happened that nomads attacked farmers, and humans formed large communities so that people from different cultures could interact and live peacefully. Linguistic activity played an important role in formation of civilization. The wars became larger scale due to the progress of civilization. In the first half of the 6th century BC, in Miletus, a trading city facing the Aegean Sea in Asia Minor, Thales began to explain natural phenomena through logical consistency, such as, what are all things made of? Heraclitus of Ephesus discussed the science of exploring rules that can be applied to a wide range of ways by thinking that uphill and downhill are the same. He also preached that if people share science, the community will be rich. At that time, there was a war between the Persian Empire and the ancient Greek city-state federation for control. This war ultimately ended in the victory of democratic Greece. The result was the decline of mature ancient tyrants, and the fact that democratic city-states were gaining momentum against tyranny. When war comes, even in democratic countries, propaganda spreads the great cause of war, and not only the soldiers but the whole fight as one. In this way, as science developed, the scale of war increased, and the damage of war became enormous. The universality of science extracted in the world of logic. The method of modern science begins with Newton's Principia, mathematical principles of natural philosophy. The laws of physics discusses the properties of the same dimension. In 1986, Aldrich wrote in a book entitled Mechanical Man, there are no exceptions to the laws of physics. In the end, it is attributed to all things, elementary particles and the basic laws of the universe. However, the universality of physics was found in the world of human logic. The world of physics is limited in the world of extracted. It is difficult to physically express the mechanism of life that are made up of multiple activities. Also, the atomic structure is composed of the chemical bonding forces of the short-range force. The universal gravitational force is negligible because it is about 10 to the minus 35th power of the chemical bonding force. Observable is given by acting of operators in the quantum mechanics. In the first half of the 20th century, research on the structure of atoms was actively conducted, and the quantum mechanics was born. The microscopic physical phenomenon of wave property and particle properties are coexistence. It is expressed by Schrödinger's wave equation. The observed physical quantities are calculated by acting on an operator, i.e., the wave number k is calculated by the partial differentiation of x on the wave equation. The frequency omega is obtained by the partial differentiation of t on the wave equation. The quantum mechanics describes the behavior of measurements mathematically. In the movies, frame-by-frame images are recognized as a motion. It cannot be described in the middle of a frame transition. Zenon of Elea in ancient Greece discussed the mechanism of recognizing motion saying, a flying arrow is stopped. Visual neural networks recognize the movement in response to changes in state. The results of mechanics calculations can be interpreted. However, the mechanics only describe the relationship between physical quantities and does not explain the meaning of why the relationship exists. Characteristics of the war in the 21st century. Many wars begin with the cause of the state strengthening its centripetal force and expanding its control. In the 20th century, a socialist state was born with the aim of collectively implementing social changes with scientific logic. On the other hand, in a democratic country, individuals were free to innovate in real society. The people of democratic countries have liberal tendencies that give weight to the activity of the cerebral neocortex. On the other hand, the people of a tyrannical state tend to prioritize the will of the system. A tyrannical state has an advantage in waging a war of aggression, but the aggressor country lacks an objective understanding of its own country. So, even if a totalitarian state wins in the short term, it does not always mean that it will win in the long term. The war has the aspect of revolution which destroyed the cultures and created new cultures. As of 2025, Russia is waging a war to invade Ukraine. In the country during the war, there is a situation that propaganda strengthens and maintains the unity of the system, which delays the end of the war. The cause of the war in Ukraine is that the dictatorship of Russia's Putin regime is expanding its dominance by strengthening its centripetal force. Challenges for modern people. An atomic bomb is possible to destroy a whole city, is poisonous to mankind. The nuclear weapon is not something that should be possessed. We must achieve the abolition of nuclear weapons. How can we abolish the nuclear weapons? In Japan in the second half of the 20th century, the opposition to the war was prevalent, and it was avoided to get involved in war. However, competition between humans continues. During the period of high economic growth at the end of the Showa period, excessive stress from competition continued to be applied to the cerebral neocortex. And it has caused problems such as psychosomatic disorders due to excessive stress due to competition between humans. In Japan, when high growth had reached its peak and growth becomes stagnant, a new society began to seek development. However, even if you dream of the return of past glory, you will not return to the same activity again. New attempts will be made in the associative cortex of the cerebrum, so we should work on new tasks so as not to fall into madness. Conclusion. Intelligence is achieved through the activities of nerve cells. The brain is a network of nerve circuits, and nerve fibers act like threads of puppet. The mechanism of a computer is similar to brain neural circuit. The parallel digital data are intermittently uploaded on a data bus and those are transmitted to the destinated decoder. In a computer network, the transmitted information is divided into small parts. Each information is assigned a destinated address and uploaded to the linked line to convey the information to the target computer. Internet takes important role in the today's community. It has become a convenient society where various information can be easily distributed. Information drives society, but that information is created by humans, and science can be erroneous and cause war. This video summarized the human intelligence from the perspective of the activity of cranial neural circuits. Thank you for your attention.